I call this meeting of the Magnolia Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. So if everybody please stand, Ms. Baker is going to lead us in our invocation and the pledge.
It is a long-standing tradition in our district to open with prayer, so if you'd like to pray with me, please bow your head. We come to you today, Lord Jesus, and ask your blessings upon our meeting and upon our business. We ask, Lord, for the truth to be told about our service in this community and for everyone to be on one accord. We ask, Lord, that your will be done in every decision that we make and in every outcome. We thank you, Lord, for the blessings that you bestow upon this community and for the blessings that you bestow upon all of the people that we serve. We ask, Lord, for your continued guidance and grace, and we are most thankful for the gift of salvation. In Jesus Christ's holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. If you'll join me for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Okay. Ms. Hinkleman, we have audience participation, the three that you gave me, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we'll do them in this order, and Calvin, you're first. And while he's coming up here, I'm going to read some instructions that pertain to everybody that participates. Participants must have turned in a request form and must have followed administrative channels before addressing the board. Participation is limited to 5 minutes. Thank you. Any complaint or charge brought against an employee by name opposition must be addressed through the proper administrative channels and will not be addressed directly through this agenda item. Please note that the Board of Trustees shall not deliberate, respond, or make decisions regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda that is posted. All right, with that, Calvin, it's yours.
Yeah, time, or can I grab my phone real quick? I'm gonna have my cell timer. Sorry.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Calvin Whitey with the Herff Jones Company. Thank you for allowing me to speak. We are a family-run business and service the North Houston area. Herff Jones has been a partner with Magnolia ISD since the 1980s, and I have personally serviced this area since 2001. I live and work locally off of 1488 and 2978, and have been a constant supporter of education in Magnolia ISD and the community. Tonight, our long-standing partnership is at stake. Agenda item 7A plans to recommend the Houston Balfour office in the Galleria to service all of Magnolia ISD with class rings, cap and gowns, and graduation supplies. This is the first graduation request for proposal that's ever been issued, and all products in the RFP are paid for by the parents, not the district. My proposal includes very competitive pricing to save parents money in this once-in-a-lifetime achievement. This RFP did not include graduation diplomas, which is paid for by the district. Even though not included, I extended special pricing on diplomas to the district that would save the district over $18,000 over the 4-year contract. In looking at the copy of the tabulation scores of the most recent letter jacket RFP, it showed Herff Jones with very high point totals across the board. Reputation, quality of service, and meeting district's needs were all categories that Herff Jones ranked the highest. Balfour ranked the lowest in all of these categories. I was informed today that the decision on the graduation RFP came down to the principal's feedback. All principals, past and present, including Jeff Springer and Rob Stewart, have given me praise and thanks for all I do for the district and the students. Dr. Garza, Dr. Metz, and Dean Frederick told me personally after graduations that I have done a great job. I spoke with Dr. Metz just today, and he informed me that he gave all positive feedback to the committee. I worked closely with the senior sponsors, and they were not involved in the decision-making process. I can assure you that all feedback from them would be positive. Herff Jones is a nationwide company, but my office is a small local business in the community. I currently employ 4 retired Magnolia ISD teachers and administrators: Panette Kelch, Ray Tucker, Mary Ruth Thomas, and Susie Weinberg. As a small local business, I am proud to give back to the community. As a faithful Christian, I believe in giving back my time, talent, and treasures. My job is very rewarding, either at a Herff Jones class ring ceremony or at graduation. I am the guy behind the scenes, making sure everything goes correctly, year after year. Switching to a company that has not serviced the district will not guarantee a smooth graduation or even having a class ring ceremony at all. The cap and gowns you see at graduation are a custom Herff Jones product that is exclusive in the industry. Balfour does not provide custom graduation gowns to their high schools. There are a countless number of teachers, counselors, and administrators that would vouch for my outstanding service and compassion towards all the students. I have an impeccable track record of taking care of all students and helping with graduation rates through different programs like our Believe in You program and attendance incentive programs, to name a few. I left you all a copy of the numerous ways I partner and support Magnolia ISD, not just at the high school level, but at the district level as well. This year alone, I've contributed back over $10,000 in product and monetary support to this community. This includes 30 free cap and gowns to each school for students who can't afford one. Dr. Stevens and Dr. Bullock have told me personally that I am one of the best vendors in Magnolia ISD. My reputation, affordable pricing, and service should speak volumes in this proposal. In closing, when you hear the recommendation tonight about graduation items, I ask you to look behind the numbers and see how much value that Herff Jones brings to Magnolia ISD. Please reconsider its recommendation and continue our long-standing partnership. I thank you for your time.
Calvin, thank you. Okay, our next one is Ginger Russell.
How do y'all like my color yellow? Anyway, when I went and ran for school board in 14, I truly ran because I care about kids. I have two kids, 7 grandkids, and I care about education for children. My kids did go to Magnolia. My mother is a science author, a well-known science author across the world. She would come and do workshops at the school, has given a lot of books to the school district when she was here. I've got pictures of my children and her on the front page of the Magnolia Potpourri back then. And I went off to homeschool my kids for various reasons. And when I went to run for school board, this board and your friends were vicious to me. I want to thank you for that now. It was hard, and when I think about it still, it's still hard. But I want you to know it has made me a stronger person. And it made me aware that there's something going on in this district that needs to be paid close attention to. I've always said, once I got involved in the education industry of the school, government entity of school boards, y'all aren't transparent. You're not accountable to the people who voted for you. You're only accountable to those behind that door. And there's so much I could say. If I went back and looked at the minutes of y'all's school board meetings, I think I'd be hard-pressed to ever find one that your votes were not on a consensus, always voting together. It's like George Orwell's groupthink. That's what a school board is now. And that is evident with this TRE election that y'all had at 7:30 in the morning where no one was here. Nobody knew about. People are just now waking up. And why are they waking up? It's not because y'all are telling them. It's because I'm getting out there with my friends at block walking. I mean, really, you should just be ashamed of yourself.
Okay, Calvin, I believe you're next.
I'd also like to talk about the TRE election. You know, it really bothers me that you had the board meeting to discuss it at 7:30 in the morning, the week after you had your regular scheduled board meeting, as opposed to having it at a regular scheduled board meeting, so you'd have some public input. And it appears to me that that was on purpose, that you probably didn't want a lot of public input. To hold this special election, I don't know if you disclosed how much it cost us, the taxpayers, to hold the election. I've heard it's upwards of $100,000, but I can't verify that. I don't know. You guys probably do know. And I think it would have been much better had you taken your argument to the community and at least find out what our pulse was about this, what our opinion was about this before you committed the funds to go and have this election. They call this election a penny swap. And I think that's a very deceptive thing whenever in your video that you put out, you tell the people that this is not a tax increase. Well, the only thing that this is for sure is a tax increase. You call it a penny swap because you say, well, we've got extra money in the INS and we're gonna give you that money back. And so even though we're busting through the state cap where we're forced to have an election to get more money, we're gonna give you that money back. Well, what you don't tell the people is that at any moment, you can go right back and say, you know what, we may have misfigured on that, and we're gonna take that INS money back. Well, there's no election required for that. So you get your money for your M&O, your maintenance and operation, by increasing our taxes, and then you can come back at any time and raise that INS, that interest and sinking fund, right back to where it was, or even pass it up to a certain degree, and there's no election required for that. Well, I think that this is smoke and mirrors, and I think that you're selling this like snake oil to the public, hoping that they don't know what's going on. And we're doing our best to let people know, you know, that we think that this is a shell game or a bait and switch. And anyway, from a lot of people that we're talking to, they had no clue, just like we had no clue, that this was even going on until we informed them and started making it public. And, you know, we're kind of in the middle of education. I mean, we pay attention, and we didn't know. I don't know where it was advertised. I'm sure that you met whatever the legal requirements were. But I wish that you had made it public and let people know. Another thing is, I'm really glad that Calvin was here before me. What a great name. And looking at your needing more and more money, and I don't know what the number is now, and I'm gonna throw a number out, but I've read something that right now you collect around $67 million a year for the entire district. I believe that's right. And I'm wondering, my word, you need more. My taxes, like anybody sitting in this group probably, are through the roof. Our property taxes are killing us. They're running people off of their property. So you get 67 million, you're saying, we can't make it on that. We gotta have more money. Well, I haven't seen where you've made cuts in the budget. Tonight, I heard from this gentleman that said that you're awarding a contract that's $18,000 more than the bid that he gave you. Wow, that just makes my point. You guys have got to look at what we're spending, not just what more money, which give me more money, because we'll make a vote, and we're going to tax you people off your land if we have to, and get more money for what we think we need. But where is budgetary process that says, this is why we just absolutely cannot do without it. So if you prove your case to the people that you absolutely cannot make it without it, kids are not gonna get schooled, buildings are gonna close down, whatever, you make that case to them, then they'll probably vote this in. But if you just slip it in there and hope that nobody's paying attention, I don't see how you can really do that and feel comfortable about what you're doing as a school board. You have a responsibility and obligation to the people that you represent, which is me. I don't have any children in
Mr.
school.
Russell, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hebert, you're next, I think.
Okay. There we go. Well, it is that time of year in which we get our preliminary run and first look at what our student achievement is in relation to the STAR test this year. And so this one will be brief because this is particularly, this is not our set of students that we are accountable for. This is just raw score numbers, just everybody who took a test. And so we're just going to get a brief look at this, and then there will be, as you know, many more rounds to come as we get more of our information that comes to us in August that will give us a much better look at our accountability and what that looks like. So just for your information, as you know, I think I have this every year, what's changed about the test. We have something that's a little bit different, and most of these aren't incredibly significant, but kids in elementary got to use a dictionary this year, and they've expanded the use of the calculator to 8th grade science. But one of the most significant changes is that they used to have several different tests, one for Spanish-speaking students who needed accommodations for language support. They had another test for special education students who received certain accommodations. And what they did, and this is important because of one of the issues that they had, they put those together onto one test, all of the accommodations, and they expanded which kids could have it. And so our students that had particular needs could take an online version and be given just the accommodations and supports that they needed. So we had lots of students who took advantage of that opportunity to take the test online with some of that support. And for instance, spelling assistance for some of our students with dyslexia. There were on the writing test, sticky notes, pop-up things, vocabulary, things that would help students. And then, as you'll see on this page, the second bullet, one of the big issues that came up with the testing company this year had to do with online testing. There was the server with the testing group went down during the test for quite a period. So some of our students with greater needs for helps and supports were interrupted in their test taking for quite some time and had to do lots of log in, log on. And it was a state issue all across the state. And we had, it's not a giant group, but we had a group of students who were affected, and their scores are included here tonight. These are just raw scores, but the commissioner has made the decision for those particular tests, if they were off a certain period of time or a certain number of logins, he's given criteria, their results will actually be removed from our accountability subset for us to look at later. So that's just another of the ongoing saga that we have in working to have the best and most accurate reporting of where student achievement is. Another thing that is different this year that is, as far as reporting, there was another measure for students who were Spanish-speaking students as depending on their years in U.S. schools, they could earn a passing score by making significant progress, even if they didn't reach the final benchmark, just as long as they kept really moving forward towards success. And that is not part of what we have available to us this year either, because they changed the other test that they take, which is called the TELPAS, that tells us about their language proficiency. So those two things are somewhat different in the reporting, and that's all included here in the numbers that you see here for the first run. So if we just look at, this is what we're used to looking at, and that's just who passed and the numbers that we have. The state now looks at 3 different criteria, particularly for our accountability approaches would be what they considered the bottom line passing score. Then there's a meets grade level standard, and there's a master's grade level standard. We'll get those numbers at a later report when we have more specific to the students that we're accountable for, but we're looking to move forward. And you can see it's kind of as, in fact, if you read articles all across the state, we have some that went up. Even these are district averages. We have some elementaries that went up, some that went down. And it's kind of a mixed bag of results this year, and that's something that's kind of been an interesting thing to look and read about. But you'll see in our elementaries particularly, we're not moving the way that we need to in the areas of, well, reading and then math in 3rd grade, and our writing did not move forward the way that we were looking for it to. One thing that we did particularly, as you remember, have our eyes on was that 5th grade group that had been underperforming the other groups ahead. And even though they came in only 3 points below the prior year's group, they were 14 points below last year. And so we've bridged that gap and met the state level, and you'll see that in just a minute. So they have moved up to the level that is much more appropriate. We've bridged that gap, but we've got some more work we can see to do at the elementary level. You can see once up into junior high, it starts getting up into the numbers that we feel better about and want to keep moving that forward. And kind of across the board, up into those 80s, up toward 90 is what we're looking for. And our junior highs continue to push that forward, and so we've got to get our elementaries into that zone where that's what our expected levels are as well. As far as when we look at compared to the state, you'll see that's kind of the bubble that I'm talking about. When the green is when we are above the state, which is of course where we want to be, and not just a little bit above, but we want to be fairly significantly above where the state average is. And so you'll see at that elementary level, we have some work to do. And one of the things I think you've probably seen, we've had some staff that, as staff has left and rearranged and a few other movements within our system, we've been able to put together a team that we feel really good about, of some new leadership in the ELA, and then support for the elementary math program as well to help shore that up and bring some new vision and energy to those programs, because we can see that's an area that we need to step on and move forward. We, in the areas of meets and masters, which are not the students, not just the beginning level of passing, those are some areas that we have moved forward. And so, but here, do know that we see that and we're addressing it really every day as we speak. As we move on to the high school level, we have lots of good news there, and that is something that we're really proud of. You can see every level is up, and up somewhat significantly from where they were last year. And except for social studies, they already was sitting at a pretty high number. And so we're really, really proud of those results. And moving English has been a hard thing all across the state because it's a multifaceted test. And to get that kind of movement, we were really proud of the work that was done and the things that happened there. And then when we can look at compared to the state, you can see that's green all the way down at the high school level, just as we would expect to be, and fairly significantly above the state average, where we would want to be as well. So that's our first look tonight at scores. We'll have more reports to come. And August 7th is the first report date for when we get the accountable scores that will be in. And then that will go forward the next week on the 14th. It will be released to the public. So we'll have more specific information to give you at that time.
Well, so I can remember the 5th grade cohort was the issue before.
Mm-hmm.
And now, looking at 3rd and 4th grade, what can you identify that we can improve in those areas? Because I would have thought those would have been higher.
Exactly, that's what we would have thought too. We're just looking at some of the program issues and the leadership. This is a big year for ELA. They'll be changing their standards. They'll also be adopting books. And so we have pulled together, we kind of have a new team. We have Shay Garland, who is the one who's been leading the secondary ELA group, will be the K through 12 director of that whole program. And then she'll have AJ Pitts, who has been the Smith Elementary assistant principal and comes with a lot of great solid ELA background from when she worked at a Region Service Center and did the training and all of that. And so we believe that the combination of those two, along with working specifically with our instructional coach and that leadership vision for what the program needs, especially as it moves forward with significant changes, will provide the support that our teachers need to be a little steadier on that early level of reading, because we realize that is vital to any future success. And so that's going to mean the elementary is moving into a K through 4 model. It'll be pretty significant. That will be their role, is to make sure that that happens, first grade, second grade, and that everybody stays at the level that is appropriate as they move forward. So that's their charge as we move forward, is that new vision of leadership to take where we are and tweak that and provide the supports that they need. So,
And you
yes.
said, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, please go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, you said some schools had done, obviously, there's
Some
different
schools went
performance
forward
across the
and
8 schools.
some made a bigger dip.
Right.
And so that the district average is not completely reflective of the whole district as the whole. We have some campuses that did much better, and then some that 3rd grade group went down further than we would have liked. And so we've kind of got an eye on those. I'm grateful to have Dr. Garza's assistance as he's moved into his new role in helping to watch that data, and he's been out meeting with each principal individually, working on the plans for that moving forward as well, and having his support on their leadership on the campus and what that looks like will be a significant support in that realm also. Okay, Mr. Duncan.
The 3rd grade level, I guess that's the one that probably concerns me the most. I mean, what do we do now to help offset? I mean, I know we're changing the programs to help those next younger kids that are going to be in 3rd grade.
Right.
That's wonderful. But now we've got that young man, that young lady who's in 3rd grade who hadn't scored so well. And they've got to get all these years in front of them.
And that's where he's been out talking to them about getting that pocket, what's starting at the very beginning of school, bridging that gap and finding where it is. We were able to do that with our 5th grade group that we've been watching. And so some of those same principles we'll put in place on the front end at filling those gaps early. Many of them are very close, can move forward, and we can tweak it. But yeah, 3rd grade is a foundational grade, is fairly significant in moving our whole system forward. That's where we
Is it
start.
possible in 1 year to turn those 3rd graders that, don't have the scores that we would like them to by 4th grade, is it reasonable for us to expect that we brought them up to a level that will achieve, allow them greater achievement in the
Yes,
future?
it is. Well, one, a maturity factor kicks in that helps with all of that. And you can see we've had our, some of our lower grades were less successful, and they get to junior high, and we can turn that. Now, we do know it needs to be turned by the time they leave elementary. That's when you can really make the biggest bang for the buck. And so that's where we're gonna be putting a lot of our time, efforts, intervention efforts into making that happen. And so our team is, in fact, they were studying the data today. We have data that helps us have predictors even at second grade for who would be prepared for third grade or not. And so we'll even have a plan in place for them. We'll have a plan in place for the third graders moving forward. And what we'd like to do is get out of the intervention plan after the fact and have a much more proactive. So that's what the ELA leadership team will be specifically working on, is that first-time instruction is so strong that we're successful without having to come back with an intervention plan later. And that's their main charge, is to help the teachers be very masterful in delivering first-time instruction and making sure the kids are getting it and staying up as we go. Anybody else?
And then the grades, what, the district grades, maybe I missed something, but.
We only have preliminary information at this point. The state will actually release the tables for what we're looking at on August 7th, the official data tables, and they won't release the grades. And it's only for the district that we will receive the grade this year. The campuses will all receive the met standard or did not meet standards, just as they have the last few years. However, the campuses, they will release in January a what-if report, as they did before, that if it had been in place, here's what the campus would have scored. And so we're pulling that up right now. We're feeling pretty good about where our district is sitting as far as the grades go right now. We've just got to wait until we have more official information to be able to push that forward. So we've just been studying a lot behind the scenes, but their data tables will come to us August 7th is the first look that we'll have at that.
And the campuses will be next year?
Yes, the campuses
I mean,
will, based on
aside
next
from the
year's-
what if, but I mean,
Yes.
next August or whatever it is.
Yes, what they do this coming school year will affect, but they will receive a grade for their student achievement this year. I will say that as far as the high schools go, a lot of the things are lag indicators that high schools, graduation rate, some of the college readiness things, those will be counted from what happened this past year. And Dr. Garza did a great job at keeping his eye on that and helping look at both schools and how that could, making sure that we were meeting indicators even this last year that was not really officially under the umbrella, but to be sure leading forward. And both of our high schools are looking pretty solid in that regard. So
Now,
we're gonna
didn't it-
head on that a little bit.
On the grades piece, wasn't it at first a normalized bell curve, which forced every grade to have X number in it, period,
Right.
regardless? And then it got fixed, and that is what that's what we'll be comparing ourselves against.
Yes,
Okay.
and what we've seen, and I'll give a much more in detail report about where we are. We just got the final accountability manual in May to tell us what that could look like, and some first mock-ups that we have. But it's a real checkerboard that gives a lot of opportunity. You could be down in one area but really strong in another one, and they will take the best of the two, and really gives the district the benefit of the doubt in earning the best grade possible. So it takes out that whole bell curve thing. Some of the indicators have a bell curve part to them, but they're just one indicator within the whole system. And so I do see a lot of good in that accountability system, not looking for what's wrong, but looking for what's right.
All right,
All right?
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bruno.
Well, you know, we're getting close to completing the 15 bond program. Go through tonight, give you a quick update. I'll go through the new event center quickly, since you kind of have an idea where we're at there. Bear Ranch Intermediate, you know, we started on the existing, well, portions of the existing sixth grade campus renovations back at spring break, when we were able to move some of the functions into the new building. So that work's obviously been going on all summer, and we're kind of moving through Area E, which is the old classroom wing. It's basically substantially complete. We still have some technology work to do in there, but we're waxing floors and moving furniture in. So those classrooms are ready to turn over. The classroom wing that we turned into the locker room is substantially complete. We're just down to doing punch list stuff in there, and then we're finishing Area F, which is the old commons areas, the cafeteria, the library, the office space that we've turned into really more the fine arts area and special ed. That's down to the wire, but you know, we got our inspection completed from the fire department, and we've got a partial cover, so we feel pretty good about that. We just have to drop the seal in and go in and put in our ceiling mounted fixtures, and then we'll have the fire marshal back out. So we're obviously well on schedule for our August completion, but we're sort of moving into these areas as they become available. This is a classroom. Sorry, I kind of skipped through there, but this is a corridor in Area E. This kind of gives you an idea where there's missing ceiling tiles. We still have a little bit of overhead work to do, but this area is pretty much completed. You know, fresh paint job, new tile work, new ceiling. This is, of course, this whole area took all fire sprinkler systems, which we did most of the work last summer.
So this is so make sure the board, that's the old existing Magnolia 6 set of rooms.
That is the classroom wing of old Bear Branch 6.
Bear Branch, I said, yeah.
Which essentially, these corridors used to have lockers on one side, or extremely narrow. They're much more functional now.
And Tim, can I ask you a question on this? And this kind of goes to what some folks were saying earlier. One of the options we had on this building was to just destroy it and try to build a new building, but we didn't do that.
Yes.
Instead, we rehabbed it.
Yes.
Why did we do that?
Well, we had a good, you know, functional buildings, you know, structurally speaking, and it saved us a ton of money.
And would you say it's fair to say that saved us millions of dollars?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe close to 10 million.
But it's funny, some of the folks that say that don't hang around long enough, I guess, to hear that part of the discussion, which is interesting, which is what normally happens.
Yeah.
But, so that $10 million just kind of is forgotten about. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. I'm going to ask you a few more questions about that as we bump along. But
Well, that's a great point. You know, we basically took what was a structurally sound facility, and we just gave it a tremendous facelift, and we were able to save, obviously, a ton of money by doing that. But we still have space that's equal to the new space as far as the technology and the furniture and the finishes and things of that nature.
so just as good as a brand new school, but literally at least $10 million in savings to do it the way we did it.
I think that's
Well, it was about 10 million less on the amount of the.
It's a reasonable
bond
estimate.
Project.
That's right.
It's a reasonable estimate when you consider it's about 70,000 square feet. What it would cost to demo and build that back? Yeah.
The reason I was wondering, because remember we told that committee,
Right.
when they walked back in that building, they weren't gonna recognize it. Well, if you wouldn't know that was the old Bear Branch,
That
you
is
know, sixth
incredible.
grade, but you wouldn't realize
It looks like brand new space to me.
it. Yeah.
And of course, this is
Those of you who were never in
this
it
is the
before, it
color
looked like
scheme
the
that's in the
Brady
exist, or the new
Dark
building, and we
paneling.
just carried it in.
It was sad.
Dr. Stevens, thank you for letting the bond committee actually tour that when you did, because it's incredible. They've got to be proud to, you know, for the months that they just were in planning meetings about it, to actually see it. And you promised that you wouldn't even recognize it, and obviously that's the truth. It looks great.
And I think we also promised that we would do it, you know, under budget and above expectation. And I think we've certainly done it under budget and above expectation.
Definitely.
And not just there.
That's exactly right.
This is a typical remodeled classroom, which, you know, you have what you don't see in this picture is you have your casework and you have your accent color wall. But I wanted to show you this where we went in with the you know, the new marker boards, and then what we don't have yet is the interactive TV. You can see that in the middle of the screen, that's where that'll go. That's one of the last things that we install, really for security reasons. We don't want them walking off or getting damaged, you know. But all the new furniture is there, it's just hasn't been dispersed, but, you know, we're just moving it in, and then obviously we'll, you know, when teachers come in, they'll start setting their rooms up the way they want them. Again, this is going into Area F. This is the, you know, this is the fine arts area, if you will, as well as special ed. It's a little, you know, it's a little further behind, obviously, because this was a complete gut and rebuild. I think you guys might remember some of the pictures I showed you just a couple of months ago, where we had everything torn out and we're under slab and.
Some of y'all went on the
pretty nasty.
committee tour in there. It was just all guttered at that particular time.
We've come a long way.
The shot of a new art room. This is in part of the old library. And of course, this is going to be a great space with that kind of glass. We cut those windows in. That was just a solid wall. When we put those windows in, you know, really bring some life to the art room. The shot of the band hall. This is the old cafeteria. Turned into a fantastic band hall. District event, any more questions about Bear Branch Intermediate? We're in good shape. I mean, you know, our maintenance guys are working their tails off this summer, moving, but we're moving boxes into the teachers' classrooms. We're getting, when the teachers come back, all of their things that were moved from their old campus where they were a fifth grade teacher into this new building is gonna be there waiting on them. So feel pretty good. Our guys have really worked hard.
One last question for you on that. I mean, is it fair to say that on that building, we had engineers' reports that came in that helped us do budgeting and come up with the cost for that? Is it fair to say that we came in substantially lower than those engineers came up with their cost?
Actually, we did come in quite a bit under budget on that project. I mean, because we added a lot of things along the way. I mean, we made some changes to the existing junior high. We added some things to that campus that weren't in the original. It still came in well under budget. So, yeah, to say that we came in under budget, yes, a little bit of an understatement. Millions,
Absolutely.
millions of
And I
dollars.
had just looking at it, I think it puts our kids can now compete with any other kids in the country with this space that they're being provided and the opportunities they're being given. That's more of a statement than a question, but, you know, I think it's something that needs to be said and is being ignored by certain parts of our community.
Moving on to the district event center, which you guys got the tour this afternoon. Obviously, the building's substantially complete. I don't know if I told all of you. I told Dr. Bullock we got our C of O today. It's kind of conditional. There's a few things that we need to wrap up, but they're really pretty minor. Next, get the health department in to do an inspection on the kitchen, but we had to get the fire marshal inspection first, and so, you know, dominoes. But I think we're well on course to turn this over in a couple of weeks, and it will be ready for convocation. So
We will be ready.
there's a shot of the portico share, shot of the lobby. This is more for the folks sitting out here because you guys got to see all this afternoon. Shot of the main corridor, the main ballroom. This is looking across all three sections. The commercial kitchen, and typical LGI. Oh, and then restroom, see if I had any more, and then the office suite. Any questions on those? Okay, I'll move into summer renovation projects. We have a lot of things going on, but I'm gonna touch on the main ones. We're finishing up Williams Elementary School renovations, which is just summer number 3. And what we're doing is we're basically taking the old 5th grade wing, converting it into a library, and then we're taking the old library and converting it into a music room, an art room, and then 2 additional classrooms. That project it's moving along well, but it's a short fuse, very short schedule on this one. So I want to show you some pictures here. you know, it's still kind of ugly, but we're putting it back together. Magnolia Elementary, we're doing some renovations to the administration there. That's going really well. We started moving furniture back into it today. So we anticipate having Ms. Roman and her staff in those offices this week. So that's gone really well. Mag Junior High, we're doing continuing to renovate restrooms. And of course, we're also replacing the gymnasium floor. And Bear Branch Junior High, we're doing renovations to the athletic locker rooms. So here's some shots of that. This is the library. All the overhead work is complete. We're about to start setting grid. You know, we've done the drywall partitions. What you see there are ceiling tiles. We're going to get those out of the way once, you know, right now we've run summer school through there, and we have some other programs that are going on right now. They're going to be completed later this week, and so we'll have a little short window where we can kind of move out into the hallway and make an even bigger mess before we put it all together. This is kind of a shot of, you've got some small group instruction areas to the left there, and then further up behind this column is the large group instruction room. So it doesn't look very pretty right now, but give me a couple of weeks and this is going to look very much different. This is a shot of the old library area that we turned into, this is an art room. There's another room similar to this that will be used for music, and then two smaller rooms that are standard size classrooms. This is Magnolia Elementary School. This is the new administration area. This was a complete gut and rebuild. Typical office. We also I took this shot just to show you where we went in, and I don't know how many of you have been in Magnolia Elementary School, but it's the old brick walls because that was the building exterior. That building used to have an open courtyard in it, and they enclosed that. And the brick had gotten pretty dirty over the years, and Ms. Roman come to me about, you know, some of our options. So anybody who watches HGTV, you know, they paint brick a lot now, so we tried it.
They always paint it gray too.
It turned out great. This is the vestibule. That's kind of the security vestibule, if you will. When you enter this building, you'll have to go into this area, and the reception desk will be kind of over, well, within this glassed-in area, but back in this area, in the main entrance here. So you'll have to go through there to check in right at that point. This will be a buzz-in door, if you will, so that if someone comes and wants to go into the body of the school, that this is where they will enter. Right? Going to add, I hope, some access security to people's minds about this particular facility. We also took 3 classrooms in the 5th grade hallway, and we turned them into 2 rooms, one a music room and one an art room, because those 2 functions had been going on in a portable building at this campus. So we moved them into the main building. Of course, they need a little more space than a typical classroom, so we did a 3 and turned it into 2. And so you can see kind of the extension there. We gave them closets, you know, storage space that they needed, and then expanded the rooms. And we built them in between the 2 spaces to create a little bit of a noise buffer.
So between the library addition, what we're doing up in the front offices there, and the art and music part of that, Magnolia Elementary is getting closer to what our mainline elementary schools look like in terms of functionability in all those rooms.
It certainly, we've been able to renovate classrooms. Now, the library, of course, obviously the administration now. The only thing that we really haven't done any major renovation to would be the cafeteria. Now, we did renovate that kitchen, but it's been some years ago. But the cafeteria is really something that we may look at as needing a facelift in the coming years. Everything else has pretty much been touched. Mag Junior High, this is a shot of the restroom renovations. Of course, once we get in here, put in the new partitions and new sinks and things of that nature, it'll give it a little more contrast. Right now, it's kind of a wild look, but this is what we did in the other restrooms last summer, and it really turned out well. This will also take new flooring. This is sort of one of the last phases of the ceiling retrofit that we did over there. It's taking everything from the old 2x4 ceiling tiles into the new 2x2s. Just cleans it up a lot. And of course, the gym floor going in. And then Bear Branch Junior High locker rooms. We've removed all the lockers. We've removed all of the old plumbing fixtures. We just got this flooring put in. We just finished it Saturday. And of course, painting on the walls. We're putting in all new lockers. That's the boys. Here's the girls. This gives you a better idea. We demoed all the old lockers and bases out. They were kind of a tall cinder block, you know, sort of a deal that the lockers set on top of. I don't know what to call it, a little pony wall, essentially what it was. We tore all that out, went back in with new concrete bases, putting in the larger athletic lockers, because this used to house both athletics and PE, and since we built the new PE locker rooms, we're now expanding this athletic locker room. So it'll have all new toilet partitions, toilet fixtures, plumbing fixtures, sinks, everything will be new in these spaces. But this was taken today. The lockers are going to be here Wednesday. You're going to need about a week to put those in. We'll be doing the other things. So about a week and a half, we should wrap this project up. That's it.
Did the new paint get rid of the smell?
Well, I tell you, what they have to do to the floor to prep it for that surface definitely got rid of a lot of the old odor. That's surprising. I mean, that, you know, just really cleaned it. You had to, because they had to grind it down so that stuff will stick.
That's not a bad thing. Because
Now, I
it
don't know how
probably
long
took a
it'll last.
grinder to clean boys like Rick was.
Well, hopefully, the 27th, next month, we can take another little tour, and maybe we can make Bear Branch intermediate and see the new areas there, swing around, see some of the athletic stuff, and then when we head back over here, we could stop and see what's happening at Williams and Magnolia Elementary on a tour that night.
Well, so, I think once this is all done, the event center's done, all this other stuff, I mean, and the dust clears, we can get an update on where we are, I guess back to Joe's point, on all of it, right? I mean, we can get a recap of, hey, here's where we landed with this thing.
There'll be one final Tim report.
That's
That'll be
right.
it.
With some glowing reports.
And then we'll retire him.
No. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to our consent agenda. And this portion of the agenda consists of items to be routine and be enacted by one motion unless separate discussion is requested. So are there any questions about A through F on the consent agenda? Okay, we need a motion that the board approve consent agenda items A through F. Kelly's motion, Christie seconded, all in favor? Motion passes. All right, Dr. Morris, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Blizzard. Are you guys going to need a driver next month, too? I'm just kidding.
There'll be somebody driving.
So item 7A, we are going to consider and possible action for our recent graduation regalia, RFP that we put on the street. I want to give the board a little bit of background on this before we officially make a recommendation. Since the graduation regalia is not a cost to the district, this isn't something that requires an RFP on our part, okay? So I want you to understand that. But obviously, we believe that it is practicing due diligence to go out and seek an RFP to promote competition and make sure that our students and our parents and our campus administrators are receiving the best value from the companies, okay? And so we put this out on the street, and of course, we've done similar with letter jackets and other things, items that don't cost the district, generally speaking, any money in the recent past. So put it out on the street. You'll see on page 60, we received 2 submissions, one from Balfour and one from Herff Jones. You'll see the weighted criteria, including purchase price, reputation of vendor, quality of services, meets the needs of the district, long-term cost, additional resources, and so forth and so on. I also want to make sure the board understands that we created a selection committee that was comprised of three different district administrators and each of the two high school principals, okay? And so, based on a collection of the committee, it is the district administration's recommendation to award the graduation regalia RFP to Balfour. I will make one other comment. There was a comment made earlier that has to do with the cost of diplomas. I do want to make sure the board understands that is not going to be a cost to the district and a disparity of $18,000 regardless of who we use, okay? We've reached out to Balfour to make sure that we can receive the same deal from them.
That's not, you should have asked him if he could receive the same deal as them. That's not fair.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
He said you got to ask Balfour to match him. Did he get to match Balfour for anything? That's just not fair.
I haven't been contacted. Today was the first time I've spoken to anyone about
He's from this town. That should have a lot to do with it.
Like I said, I think, I feel confident that our selection committee performed the necessary research that we need to make a collected decision here. In particular, the feedback we received from each of our high school principals.
What was it? And why was it preferred?
I can't get into specifics about the information, but again, I can tell you that we received specific feedback from each of the high school principals, and primarily based on quality of service, level of professionalism, and a few other areas. That's the committee's recommendation.
So they went
Do you-
to bat for Balfour and not this gentleman.
Ma'am, you have an opportunity to sign up for audience participation, so you cannot speak right now.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to share about the evaluation that was done, Dr. Morris? Because I'm going to ask these guys if they got any questions before you.
No, sir. Like I said, I think the new system that we use is pretty straightforward. I mean, hopefully the board has been able to review each one of these categories. Some of it is somewhat subjective in nature, but again, I think it's important to note that we have a selection committee that was built to make this decision, and 5 different members who collectively have made the recommendation.
Okay, has anybody got questions? And what are they?
Yes, sir.
I think it's just important to point out about the selection committee. So what you're saying is the folks who actually deal with this issue and certainly have a lot more knowledge than we have sitting here at this table.
Well, yes, sir,
ones who have
and
made this
absolutely, and
recommendation.
obviously, that's one of the most important aspects in this situation, because again, generally speaking, there's no cost to the district. So when we're reviewing the submissions and we're meeting about these, we pay specific attention to the campus administrator input.
Just on every RFP situation or anything that we do for building birth, there's a criteria list set up which includes price, and it also includes a different criteria that we list up in front that a committee or a group is gonna look at, which in terms of the quality of the service, the reputation of the provider, all those things have a set point weight, and they're all added into it, which when it's figured up at the end, it provides us with a decision about which direction we could go. And obviously, some of those are subjective, and that's what Mr. Morris is saying. On the price point between the two of these, it was negligible.
Right.
They were the same. So it came down to a subjective decision about the rest of the criteria rating that has been set in advance. And again, our campus principals, the people that had the most input, made those decisions and ratings about it, and we came out with the favored response here that we're bringing to the board at this point.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And just devil's advocate, we can change this year to year, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
not something that.
Yes, sir.
This is
I
not a
think
10-year commitment.
At this point, and we've started to review more and more of these types of things because of some of the things that have arisen in other instances where we may have been what we felt overcharged, or the parents were overcharged in certain instances. And I'm not talking about this RFP in particular. We have Mr. Stearns in attendance tonight, who is our relatively new purchasing supervisor. And so with the reorganizing and additional folks that we have in the business office, we're able to better focus on these things. So we believe, again, that we are doing the due diligence of the school district to go through these different things. Sometimes I know that there's difficult decisions, to be made, but I still believe that we're making a decision that's in the best interest of the school district.
Eric, who's on the committee again?
There were 3 different folks from the business office, Mr. Stearns, myself, Mr. Mate. We asked Dr. Bullock for his input as well, and then each of the high school principals.
And just like when we weighed in on the letter jacket situation, we're not being asked because we're committing district funds. We're being asked because it would be a universal change for the district.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. And again, and I don't know if I specifically answered the question, but I anticipate that this will become the norm each and every year for letter jackets and for graduation regalia and so forth and so on. So folks will have the opportunity to bid every year at this point moving forward. Thanks to Mr. Stearns.
Were the 5 people on the committee privy to the additional information that we were given today by our rep from Herff Jones?
I do not know
I know
which
that the two
specific
principals
information
were
you're talking about, but I do know or am confident that they are aware of the diploma.
And it is the 2 principals who most of this activity was on their campuses, so they probably were aware.
Absolutely. Yeah, yes, ma'am. I mean, they are aware of every different criteria that we've reviewed and so forth and so on from both submissions. Yes, ma'am.
Where does the rep live for this company, Balfour? Where is that person located?
I do not know that offhand. Adam, you may know. No. Obviously, Balfour is a very respected company. Across the state of Texas, they have, I believe they're embedded in Tomball and other very large surrounding districts as well.
And so maybe that's what you answered for Christie. When you got through with the evaluation, I guess all the people that contributed to it saw it.
Absolutely.
And had
And understand the references.
That's right, and they could come back and change it if they want.
And it's very possible that some of the folks had a history with some of the other companies as well in previous districts and whatnot. I mean, all of that stuff was taken into consideration before making this decision. Yes, sir.
Well, I think it's a great thing that you, even though it's not reflective of district funds, that you went through the exercise, because I think watching after how parents' money is spent is a very good thing.
Well, thank you.
It's made us a difference on some other things.
It really has. I mean, it has shined some light on some things that either the district and or the students and the parents were and I'm not talking about this one in particular tonight, but we weren't getting the best value, to say the least.
Well, and I make that comment because I know in this case it didn't have to do with money. I'm just saying
No.
it's good to do when it's not, even when it's not the district's money, because it might.
Exactly. Somebody's paying it.
Right.
Parents are paying it, yeah.
Right.
The campus administrators have more to do with this vendor than the district administrators do
Day to day,
in
yes, ma'am.
practice.
That was heavily considered in the decision, the feedback from the campus administration.
Any parent input?
Do not believe that there was any parental involvement on the committee, no.
But probably by proxy, the administrators.
Absolutely.
Because they know what's
They're
going
the ones
on with
that deal
parents.
with
and-
the group, regardless of who it is and the representative and which firm on a day-to-day basis. So, like I said, we put heavy emphasis on that. Like Mr. Blizzard mentioned, it's not even something that we had to go through from a procurement perspective, but we believe, again, this is a collective decision of the 5 committee members.
So this recommendation is the recommendation of the 5-person committee, including our 2 campus administrators that would most heavily deal with this.
That's correct, yes, ma'am. The recommendation of the committee is to award the RFP to Balfour.
Anybody got any questions or comments? Want to make sure we get all those out. That's why we want to take the time to do that. Okay, what Dr. Morris has asked us to do is approve Balfour for this RFP. So if there's no other questions or comments, then we need a motion that we approve Balfour for graduation regalia for Magnolia ISD RFP number 090118-01. Motion by Travis, seconded by Kelly. All in favor? Motion passes. All right, Dr. Morris, you're still on.
Yes, sir. 7B, consideration of possible action for financial advisement services. I want to give the board just a little bit of background on that as well. The board may recall about 6 or 7 years ago, we went through the RFQ process. Given the amount of time since our previous bond and the fact that we were anticipating a fairly new bond in the future, and the fact that we had turnover each in the superintendent's office and my office since that time. At that time, we made a recommendation to award Mr. Terrell Palmer, an FA of First Southwest Securities. The board overwhelmingly approved that. So we've had Terrell and that firm. They've recently changed their name to Hilltop Securities. We could not be more pleased with the efforts of Terrell, but so the question may be, so why are we going out now? Well, he changed firms, okay? He and his immediate assistant changed firms and went to a new firm called Post Oak Municipal Advisors, okay? And so I do not even have another contact who I've spoken with at the old firm. So we know no one at this point at the old firm. So in most of these instances, in terms of working with someone for our bonds and our refunding, sometimes or most times I would say, the financial advisor, his or herself, is probably more important than the firm itself. And so decided to put this out on the street, back out for an RFQ at this point. We received 4 submissions. You'll see there on page 70. Again, one from Post Oak MA, one from our current provider in terms of the firm in Hilltop Securities, but again, keeping in mind our FA is with the new firm. One from Hutchison, Shockey, Early and Company, and then one from U.S. Municipal Advisors. We, in terms of the scoring from the weighted criteria, you'll see that pricing is pretty much the same across the board for a dummy bond election. So yet again, we're focusing on quality of service, past relationship with the district, and so forth and so on. I think it speaks volumes for Terrell himself as a financial advisor to know that many of the other very large districts that he had at the other firm are now with him again. That includes Cy-Fair ISD, Humble ISD, Spring Branch ISD. I think Montgomery County Toll Road Authority is with him as well. So again, based on our familiarity with Mr. Terrell Palmer and the level of service he's provided for us, we are recommending awarding the financial advisor service to Post Oak MA. Be glad to answer any questions.
So it's really your comfort level with this gentleman?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
That's driving this decision.
And I think it's also important to point out that, you know, obviously when we enter the bond market, whether it be for refunding purposes or new issuance, we have an entire team that we've used before. Sure. That includes the underwriters and the like. And so we will maintain that same team when we move forward. Even our bond attorneys are consistent with what we've used. But yeah, we couldn't be happier with the level of service that Terrell's provided to us. And so most definitely, I think that means more than the firm does at this point.
By the way, just to recap.
Sure.
When we did the bond, how satisfied were you with the results? Where did it come in? Did we pay a lot more than you thought we were, or a lot less?
I was very pleased with the bond, Mr. Duncan. From from beginning to end, you know, when we decided that it was in the best interest of the district, regardless, to an extent, regardless of the immediate and fairly short-term effects on the tax rate, knowing that we did not have to increase it ultimately, but that it was important to pay off the bond over 25-year amortization versus a 30-year amortization that most districts across the state had, and it had even been a practice here many years ago. And so by doing that, based on the interest rates that we received, we saved about $13 million, saved the taxpayers $13 million just by structuring that alone. So yeah, I think that's important. And of course, Mr. Bruner's touched on it several times earlier. Could not be more impressed with he in terms of keeping all the budgets well under the original projections. That's not an easy task. I mean,
But even on the repayment side, you can see where we saved about $13 million.
Absolutely, yes, sir. On the structuring of the bond amortization itself, you can see that, yes, sir.
If people bother to look, but yes.
Yes, sir. And we've had several other bond refundings in the last 10 years too that have totaled millions and millions of dollars, so.
Because of our level of fiscal responsibility, our credit rating continues to improve, so we are able to restructure our debt, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Our bond rating, if you recall, was increased, I want to say, well, it was a couple of years before the bond, so around 2013, 2014, primarily as a result of paying off the debt that we had for so many years earlier than anticipated, and also the fact that we did not have a bond for so many years. The previous administrations had planned very well for building capacity and things of that nature, so absolutely, yes, ma'am.
So it wouldn't be indicative.
And other financial strengths, financial considerations such as district's fund balance and things of that nature, of course, have contributed.
So you wouldn't say that would be indicative of a board that was trying to scam the public?
No, sir, I would not.
Okay, I just had to ask that question.
I would, well, I could go on for days up here, but I mean, I would hope that folks would, you know, I mean, anyone who's interested in looking at our comprehensive annual financial report, or our CAFR, Ms. Myers, you know, would be able to see that, at least since I've been here in 10 years, we've never adopted a deficit budget, ever. So, you know, I've been here 10 years, we've never adopted a deficit budget. I would think, and that is during times of substantial state cuts in 2011 and things of that nature. So I would think that would speak volumes to our taxpayers.
And as far as fiscal responsibility goes, what kind of rating does the state give us?
We received you know, each year is different from a first perspective,
sure,
from the Financial Integrity Resource System of Texas report, but we've received essentially an A+. I mean, we received a 98 out of 100 last year, and no lower than a 96 out of 100 for the past 5 to 7 years, for sure.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
And they crawl all around in our best practices, our policies, our actual expenditures.
More so than ever, similar to instructional.
So they're looking for scams?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
They're just looking for anything that doesn't look responsible, correct?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. There are heavily weighted criteria to make sure that we are doing everything we should be doing with our taxpayer dollars when we report that first report each October. So, and they've made substantial changes to that I'll be reporting this following October.
How many years, Dr. Morris, have we had a 7:30 a.m. board meeting to set a tax rate?
Several years in a row. And the reason I say that is because we laugh sometimes because I'm not really a morning person. So,
Well, I would say I've been here 20, and
Yes.
probably most of all those years, it's been at 7:30.
Yes, and the primary reason for that is because of the timing. We receive our certified values when we're using the certified values in an ordinary sense versus the certified estimates we're using for TRE purposes. The timing to when we receive those, and we have to have a public notice in the newspaper. I can't talk without my hands, but we have to have a public notice in the newspaper, and then we have to have a public hearing, which usually falls on the second or third Monday in August. So it nearly always has to be a special meeting, and I know that's become kind of the custom for the board.
So for people who are paying attention and really cared about it, they would understand this is a normal practice.
Absolutely,
in this district.
Every year.
I think another point, and again, another point to that is the May 21st meeting that we had in the morning had to do with several different issues. And one of them was similar to a normal sense, where we cannot move forward with calculating the rollback tax rates and all the truth in taxation requirements until we receive our certified estimates of values from Montgomery County, okay? We don't receive those until April 25th, okay? And so, I hope I'm not talking too much, but at that point in time, we had considered moving the normal meeting for May until the 21st, because there's no way that we could get the required postings in the paper to be able to do it on the 14th, okay? But the problem we had with that was that we had to canvass our school board election within a certain time frame. So we had to have our regular election on the 14th, and we didn't have time to have the regular meeting on the 14th, and we didn't have time to move forward with the meeting to call the election until the 21st. So that's why there was 2 meetings, and the board knows this.
So, one more question. Over the last 15 years, what's the state's share of our education gone from to?
It is roughly flipped. Around 15 years ago, it was probably close to 70-30 state to local funding, and now it's roughly, I think it's 40-60 is where it is at this point. Maybe 35-65, it's somewhere in
38
there.
is
So
less.
that's the way the state funding system works. And, well,
And what's our only mechanism to fund our schools at a local level?
there's 2 local options to be able to increase your revenue to offset the target revenue cap that the state has at this point. One of them is increasing your enrollment by performing open enrollment, which we've done. And the other is local TRE, which we're attempting as well. So that's our option.
And would it be fair to say that by doing what we've done with the amortization and the payback, by doing what we've done with the budgeting and the construction projects, wouldn't you say we've been very diligent in trying to save the district money?
Well, absolutely, and I wouldn't say that just from our perspective. I think the state has said that. I think the bond rating agencies have said that. I think the
So if people
comptroller
pay
has said
attention,
that
that
when we
information's
were
out there.
receiving awards from them as well. So, yes, sir, I would say that.
Thank you.
But just to clarify, what you're saying is we had to have information from the state in order to do everything that we've had to do, and we had deadlines by which to do it. So as
Yes.
soon as we feasibly could is when we had meetings that we had.
Absolutely, and in terms of the timing of the election, I think obviously it makes sense to know how much money we're going to have to be able to adopt a budget as well. That has to be adopted by September 1st.
And it's consistent with what we've done for the last 15 or 20
Absolutely.
years.
Yes, sir.
Every year I've been on the board, that's when the meeting's been, to set that. And it would have been not doing our due diligence to make any kind of call on having this election without knowing where we stood first.
Yes, ma'am. 100%. All the parameters are from the Texas Comptroller, for sure.
And all of this information is posted for those who care to see it.
We have a lot of information on our webpage. Yes, sir.
I mean, meeting times and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. The videos are recorded as well, I understand. So.
Well, I was about to say, it's good we have a video of this for those who might be interested in learning something from our board meeting.
Absolutely. Because if you're not here, you don't get to see it.
That's right. Okay, back at the ranch. We need a motion. Dr. Morris has asked us to approve this RFQ. We need a motion that we approve Post-Oak MA for financial advisement services for Magnolia ISD, RFQ number 060418. Motion by Chuck, seconded by Christie. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Morris.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart.
Good evening. On a lighter note, let's talk about student behavior. Every year we bring you 2 documents. The first is for review. It's the handbook. We'll be doing that in the month of August at that board meeting. This month we're bringing to you the Code of Conduct for consideration and approval. This is a non-legislative year, so in terms of how we do things, there was no legislative process that changed it or litigation case law that changed it. So pretty much the only changes in the Code of Conduct this year are primarily came as a result of clarification. You'll find throughout, the glossary grew at about 9 or 10 definitions, just so all parents can understand what it is. We use TASB's model Code of Conduct, so we added those definitions in. There was also a lot more references to what the penal law was or what the education code was, so parents can look those up at a lot easier ability without having to get clarification on it. They also turned and they used some terms, so it's not just, for example, the school environment, but they're referring to as how things infringe upon the rights of others. And a lot of that's dealing with some of the bullying laws and some of those pieces that have come down. But a lot of it's just minor changes that's just clarifying language so that there's less confusion from district to district, and that's the same with us as well. So we're bringing to you tonight to the Code of Conduct for your consideration as it is.
We had that in our packet. Anybody got any questions or comments about any of that? Okay, all right. We need a motion that the board approve the 2018-19 Student Code of Conduct as presented. Kelly motioned, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, sir. Okay, now it's time for us to appoint a delegate and an alternate for our TASB, our delegate assembly held in conjunction with the TASB convention in Austin on Saturday, September 29th at 12:30 p.m. to 2 p.m. Delegates from each region will meet with the TASB directors over lunch to discuss the issues coming before the assembly. As a delegate, you will make critical decisions that guide TASB in representing members' interests before state and national policymakers. TASB recommends that we select one of our more experienced members of the board. Last year's delegate was Kelly McDonald, and Christy served as an alternate. So, do we have a volunteer for a delegate this year? See Kelly's hand going up like this.
I'm pointing at Kelly. My finger across.
Okay, we have Kelly volunteering for a delegate. Do we have an alternate? Volunteer for an alternate? Christy, you'll do this again? All righty, so we need a motion that the board select Kelly as delegate and Christy as alternate to serve on the 2018 TASB Delegate Assembly. Motion by, you're quick to raise your hand there, Chuck. Seconded by Joe. So all in favor? All right, that passes. Thank you.
Is that gonna be in Dallas where they're going?
Austin.
Austin.
I wouldn't have volunteered if it was.
You're on
I can
your
only
own.
get on my freeways. I can never get off.
Something crazy I like it.
Going to God's country.
Oh.
All right.
I forgot the whole Longhorn connection.
Yes, I want to talk to you about our revision to the school calendar. We went through a lengthy process last year through our district improvement committee and brought forward recommendations on a school calendar. We do want to make one small change to the calendar that was approved last spring, and we would like to take the February 18th President's Day and change that from a holiday for teachers, students, and staff to a work day for staff. It would still be a holiday for students. And the reason for that is for us to meet the total of instructional minutes as set by the state. Once we worked out our times for school to start with opening the intermediate level and staging that out the right way, we want to build enough minutes into what we're getting to have a little bit of flexibility should we have bad weather, which tends to happen around here every now and then. So if by turning that February the 18th back into a professional development day, we can claim waiver minutes from the state, which goes into our total since teachers are going through professional development, even though kids aren't here. So it's no change for kids and parents, but for staff it would be a work day, and we'll trade that work day out in the 2 weeks of professional development on a campus by campus basis here when teachers initially come back on contract. So we'd still be working the same number of days in a contract year for staff, and but we get the minutes, which allows us a little more flexibility and means we would need to miss one more day of school before we get to having to add minutes to the school day, or probably worst case scenario, invite people to come back for one more day of school after Memorial Day, which I'm guessing would be rather unpopular. So here we are in counting minutes, and so the recommendation is to change the February the 18th to a professional development day on next year's calendar.
Because if that weather's bad out there, I'm calling it off.
I'm bringing them to your house.
In your truck.
I got a whole truck full.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay,
And professional development, that February President's Day has traditionally been a professional development day for us. I think this will be the first year that it was going to be an outright holiday. And if it makes you feel any better, the last two versions of the calendar that made the finals in the teacher committee, the only difference was whether that day was a professional development day or an outright holiday. So this won't be a surprise, I don't think.
and it comes out in the wash.
That's the theory, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we need a motion that we approve the 2018-19 school calendar revisions as presented. Motion by Kelly, seconded by Travis. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, sir. All right. Wait a minute, are we out of order?
What about Ed?
Am I not next?
You're next. Local policy revision. That was Jason too, so we're not doing that. Right, because we had local policy revision. So you're still on board? You still on board?
You're next, sir. We changed it.
Did you change it? You're still up there, I think. Okay. All the local, all the policies. I was like, wait a second.
Sorry.
He's trying to get out of something here.
Build the anticipation.
I'll call it this one, it's a different, okay.
This one's even more exciting.
How about that? All right, so this is about as straight down the lane as you can get. These are local board policy changes that are about cosmetic is the way to put it. We have realigned some of our grade level requirements on progress reports and how we handle a few things academically to align with us now having 5th and 6th grade campuses and not having policies read as K through 5, we do this, since 5th and 6th grade is over here, and then, would say secondary 6 through 12 does this. So you'll see that in a few of the policies. There is a change in compensatory accelerated services, which is EHBC local, which removes dyslexia as an identifier for at-risk. That's more of a state change that we're just complying in local policy. And then the last one that I want to call your attention to is EIA local, which deals with class rank. And we are, at the advice of our policy consultant, putting a paragraph in there that just underscores what has been our customary practice, which means that we determine class rank for valedictorian based off of grades through the third 9 weeks of the senior year. And it says that to that end, whoever is deemed valedictorian based off of that third nine weeks grade will also be deemed the, quote, highest ranking graduate, which is a state designation that gives them certain rights and privileges as they apply to colleges. And that's been customary practice in the district for several years and is a normal thing around the state of a way to do that. And recommendation from our policy rep was to go ahead and put a paragraph about that in our policy, as well as cleaning up a bunch of language for previous graduating classes that now that they have moved on, no longer needs to be in the class rank policy. And that's it. It's not any more complicated than that. Any questions?
The dyslexia one, that's state driven and what's?
That is what I'm told, yes, sir. That, it's just a change in some of the indicators that lead to a state designation of at-risk.
What impact does that have on us?
It's a great question. I can get that information for you. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yes,
Is
sir,
that a
I
change
can
in
get
how
some
they,
of the-
is that a change in how they test for dyslexia?
No, sir. It's a change in whether a student falls under state heading of at-risk. And they're saying being identified as dyslexic isn't something that qualifies you to fall under an at-risk umbrella from a state standpoint. So it's categorization of kids and, through the PEAM system.
How long ago was that changed by the state?
Rather recently, since the policy changes has just come down.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Dr. Bullock, we're about to get you off the hook here. We need a motion that we approve the local policy revisions as presented by Dr. Bullock. Motion by Christie, seconded by Chuck. All in favor? The motion passes. Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Davies. I know you were chomping at the bit here.
I appreciate you having me back. So,
So the district recently sought a request for proposals from vendors to provide the Smart Snack chicken sliders for Magnolia ISD. And after reviewing the one proposals that was submitted, and seeing that it met all the qualifications, we are asking that the board approves the district's official selection of Chick-fil-A at Magnolia, RFP 071318, to provide Smart Snack chicken sliders for the district beginning July 24th, 2018.
My son spends lots of money, so I can go home and tell him that he's gonna have Chick-fil-A next year.
I thought you were gonna demand
Sad
samples.
student.
Yeah, that was it.
That got
You know.
discontinued. There's joy in Chick-fil-A land now. They'll be happy.
That's a definite pleaser.
No questions, comments? All right. We need a motion that we approve RFP number 1071318 for Smart Chicken Sliders to Chick-fil-A Magnolia as presented. Motion by Chuck, seconded by Kelly. All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Deaton.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
He didn't get the memo that it's casual summer.
Here we are, we're at that time.
Are we done?
We're done. Well, we're through here.
Okay, at this time, the board will now recess to move into closed executive session for the purposes permitted by pursuant to Texas Government Code Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel discussion recommendations, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.072, discussion of purchase, sale, exchange, or value of real property. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Joe motions, seconded by Travis. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
You lost